So I won't look at this. So I'm Susie Newman, and my great-grandmother, my grandmother, whose name was Ivy Lena Long, but when she lived here, she was called Ivy Lena Morris. In this building, in 5 Merchants Road, Bristol, she had a boarding house, and most of her boarders were theatricals. So most of them were on the stage. They played at the Hippodrome, I suppose, maybe the Old Vic. I don't know. I know she talked about Frankie Howard staying here once. I don't know if you know that name. Probably. It's a long one. Anyway, my mother, her name was Joan Doreen Morris, and now Joan Mewing. She, as of today's date, which is the
good question. 16th of September
2023. My mother is still alive. She's 94. She'll be 95 in November. Where was she born? I don't know if she was born in this house. I know she was born in Bristol. I imagine she was born here. My grandmother had 3 girls. She already had 3 children. She was born in Guernsey, my grandmother, and then her parents were fisher folk in Guernsey, and I think life got tough, so they went to live in Plymouth. And that's when my grandmother, when she was a baby, about 2 years old, they moved to Plymouth, and there were fisher folk there too. And then eventually my grandmother moved here with her second husband. I quite like my grandmother. I remember her vaguely. Anyway, she had about 4 husbands, I think, and a few boyfriends in between. So anyway, back to, so my mum was born here somewhere, maybe in this house, which had 2 other sisters too born here in Bristol. All gone now, sadly. Now, when my mother talks about Bristol, she talks about most of all the Blitz, because she was 11 when the war started. I know at some time during the Second World War, she was evacuated somewhere into Somerset, she used to say, where they grew the cider apples. And she used to say that on purpose because she loved it. She lived with a family out in the country where they were making cider and scrumpy, she said. I can remember her saying these things. And then eventually she had to come back. She wasn't very happy here because she had to work so hard. It was a boarding house, you know. Apparently my grandmother was a very, very good cook as well as running a great boarding house for actors. Anyway, back to the war, the Blitz. So I read that it was during 40-41, there were 8 or 9 big bombardments of this area. And my mother and my grandmother and her sisters, maybe her other brothers and sisters, I don't know how old they were then, they used to stay in the basement of this building. They would go down there at night when they hear the siren, and they'd all head for the basement with their gas masks, which were quite cumbersome. And they wouldn't waste their time. They probably sat down there singing. We're a big singing family. And they'd also peel onions, because if you're wearing your gas masks, you can peel onions. You'll just make it dry.
Good idea.
And and then they would pickle them in jars in vinegar. And my mother to this day loves pickled onions. The other thing they used to do was make what my mum called iron sandwiches. So they had an old iron. I don't suppose it was electric. I don't know how they heated it up. Maybe they had a heater down there and put this flat iron on it, and they'd have 2 bits of bread and cheese, and they'd iron it like a focaccia. Anyway, what else can I tell you? That's my strongest memories. My mother used to say, though, I just have to say about my mum, she's an unusual person. She's beautiful. She's friendly and lovely and positive, optimistic. But she's never really made friends in all her life, travelling all around the world. And I often wonder if it was because of her experience here when she was an adolescent, because she used to say, you'd come up in the morning after the bombing and you didn't know if you were going to come up in the morning and what you'd find upstairs. This building survived it. But around her, she said, her friends that she went to school with were gone, you know. Yes, so I wonder if that contributed to her personality of not making long-term friendships. I don't know. Funny thing. It's part of the reason I've come to try and understand that. And she'd also say, this is very sad, she'd say that most of the people, they didn't die from being bombed, they drowned.
Right.
Because they'd come around the firemen and hose the fires out, and the water would go into and fill up the basements, which was pretty horrible too. So there you go. That's a bit of the negative story. As I said, my grandmother was here. She was a very round lady, very popular with the gentlemen. They loved her, and Ivy, and she's a very good cook too. I don't know what else I can tell you. Let's stop there for the minute.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.